Well, I'm glad you chose to watch this introduction to our study of the Apostle John's first letter. Through our study, we're going to be reminded of the essentials of the believer's life. In our time together, we'll see that we must be building our lives on the essentials of truth, obedience, and love if we're going to live as committed followers of Jesus Christ. Most likely, John wrote this letter from the city of Ephesus in Asia Minor, which is present-day Turkey. Paul established this church on his second missionary journey sometime around 50 AD. That city became a powerful center for the gospel. As Paul remained there for 3 years, you can read all about that in Acts chapter 19. John would have written this letter again, very likely from Ephesus to the church, written to the church at large, 40 years after Paul established that church. The population of Ephesus would have been about 250,000 people. The letter itself doesn't tell us that John wrote it, but history tells us that. The early church fathers declared it to be written by the Apostle John. It's not until the modern era that John's authorship was challenged. This letter is so similar to his gospel that it couldn't be from the pen of anyone else. Simply put, there are no good reasons to deny that it was written by the Apostle John. John writes to those who knew him, to those whom he had ministered for years. So John didn't need to name himself. John writes out of his concerns for the church at large. He writes to protect the church from false teachers who had left the church and were a threat to the body of Christ. The error of these false teachers was both theological and ethical. Theologically, their error was that over the person of Jesus. They denied that Jesus was the Christ, the Son of God. Ethically, they believed that they could call themselves children of God and at the same time live in sin. In our day today, the study of 1 John becomes more and more significant because the errors in the day of John have indeed permeated our no longer Christian society. We live in a day of great pluralism where who are you to say that there's only one way to God? And while everyone's concept of God is right, or we must be accepting of all views, that's pluralism. And there's no absolute truth. For sure, we live in a day when God's word is disregarded, seen as insignificant, antiquated. It certainly seems that our society says, be tolerant of everyone's views, except those who hold to what the Bible says. More and more in our own country, we see those who would call themselves Christians, but are living in the same error that John addresses. Many theologians today, not evangelical theologians, indeed do not believe in the supernatural power of God. German theologian Rudolf Bultmann in the 1950s sought to demythologize the Bible, that is, to take out the myth stories of Scripture, basically that which is supernatural. And that's rooted deeply in the mindset of liberal theologians and liberal pastors today. In 2007, Darrell Bach and Daniel Wallace, both professors at Dallas Theological Seminary, came out with a great book, and I love it. It's called Dethroning Jesus, Exposing Popular Culture's Quest to Unseat the Biblical Christ. And it is excellent, sadly, because the issues haven't changed in the last 20 years. Their introduction is titled, A Tale of Two Jesus Stories, Christianity versus Jesus-anity. And Jesus is very different between those two. I'm going to read a little bit of the introduction. A Tale of Two Jesus Stories, Christianity versus Jesus-anity. He writes that the central idea of Christianity is the claim that Jesus is the anointed one sent from heaven. Christianity involves the claim that Jesus was anointed by God to represent both God and humanity in the restoration of a broken relationship existing between the Creator and His creation. In this version, our version, of the story of Jesus, Jesus serves as a unique bridge between God and humanity, between heaven and earth. No one else is like Him. Jesus-anity, on the other hand, is a coined term for the alternative story about Jesus. Here, the center of the story is still Jesus, but Jesus is either a prophet or a teacher or of religious wisdom. In Jesus-anity, Jesus remains very much Jesus of Nazareth. He points the way to God and leads people into a journey with God. His role is primarily one of teacher, guide, and example. Jesus inspires others, but there's no throne for Him. He is one among many. In Christianity, Jesus is the way. In Jesus-anity, Jesus shows the way. Well, Bach and Wallace focus a lot in their writing on Bart Ehrman, and he is a well-trained New Testament scholar, but no evangelical. He was in that camp, born again as a teen, that's his story, went to Moody Bible Institute, Wheaton College, but then at Princeton in their seminary, he began to reject some of his evangelical roots. He no longer sees the Scriptures as the inerrant Word of God, as he teaches New Testament at the University of North Carolina. Because of where our society is today in its unbiblical or non-biblical worldview, that's why I wanted us to study 1 John, as what he wrote is so significant to us. The Apostle John's starting point is not with the unbeliever who has no view of Scripture, nor a professing believer who holds to a lower view of Scripture. Rather, John begins with a matured church which would have held a high view of Scripture. The truth of Jesus can be known, but heresies were infiltrating. So why study John's letter? The purpose is not directly to lead us to faith in Jesus. That was the purpose of his gospel. In fact, John writes in his gospel, John chapter 20, verse 30, that Jesus performed many other signs in the presence of his disciples, which were not recorded in this book, the Gospel of John. But these are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. John's letter has a different focus. In chapter 5, we see what salvation is about when he writes in verse 11, this is the testimony. God has given us eternal life, and this life is in his Son. Whoever has the Son has life. Whoever does not have the Son of God does not have life. But here's his purpose. Verse 13. I write these things to you who believe in the name of the Son of God. Here it is. So that you may, and we can nod our heads, so that you may know that you have eternal life. John is writing to the church to give us the assurance we need in our faith that we can know that Jesus is truly God in flesh, that he is the atoning sacrifice for our sin. We must be convinced of this biblical truth so that when those around us who may claim to have faith, some kind of faith, but do not possess the genuine biblical faith in Jesus Christ, we will not be shaken. So for you and me here at the chapel, as our society drifts further from the truth of God's Word, from the reality of an historical Jesus who is God in flesh, we can be encouraged in what is true, and we can know the truth. Therefore, we can stand together and pull together, building our lives on the essential truths of God's Word, so that we will not cave, but make a difference in our society that doesn't agree with us. See you Sunday.